Today, we become legends.
Alright boys, you asked and you shall receive. It's time to cover the god changes for the new Season of Hope. You know, a bunch of healer changes. Some of the changes are pretty major, which I'll spend more time on in the video, and some of them are basically just reduced healing, buffing somewhere else of the kit that I won't spend too much time on unless it's like majorly going to change the god's performance, which a lot of these buffs and nerfs won't. But yeah, definitely some more interesting changes for sure, so let's just jump right in. So, the first section of god balance will focus on gods who have the most team healing, so probably the more interesting ones. Gods are listed in order of the intensity of their team healing. The second half of the god balance section will list gods alphabetically and include the rest of the roster who has any form of healing, mostly self-heals and lifesteal gods. So yeah, basically what I just said. So first up, time to get molding, boys. Aphrodite buffs. It does seem like it's going to be buffs overall for Aphrodite for sure. So Kiss, this ability now deals 40 up to 120 plus 25% scaling damage to enemy gods. And Aphrodite now shares 50% of her MP5 instead of like a portion of her mana regeneration like it was before. And 20% of her prots with her soulmate. Support APHRO incoming, boys? Maybe? 20% of her prots could be a lot. You know, if you're building a typical support build right now, where you can get, you know, let's say you have 300 of each prots, that's pretty reasonable to get in support builds at the moment. That's going to be sharing 60 prots with your backliners. That's better than Sentinel Embrace. That's like as good as launch Sentinel's Embrace on one ally plus you. That's a lot. So maybe, you know, tanky APHRO support, is it coming? Maybe not, but it could be funny. Could be funny. You know, maybe you APHRO support mains in bronze can finally get your heyday. Also, it dealing damage. The damage is pretty small, but the fact that this will now proc on hit effects is going to be really good. You know, Tablet of Destinies, Reaver, all that kind of stuff. Definitely going to be pretty relevant. Lovebirds, huge change. So, decrease the heal per tick from 10 to 38 plus 10% to 9 to 21 plus 2 per level. So, you know, at level 20, that's going to be 61 versus 38 plus 10%. Definitely a nerf overall. Even if you aren't building that much power, still a nerf to the overall healing. But this ability now provides a flat 0.25 seconds ability cooldown reduction per tick to self and allies, including on the ability itself, because it goes on cooldown immediately. And yeah, this thing ticks 6 times, so that's going to be 1.5 seconds off of the base cooldown of the ability. Does this work on all of your basic abilities, or what? It doesn't say if it's basic abilities or like all your abilities. A flat 0.25 seconds ability cooldown reduction per ticket. It doesn't mention that it's just on this ability, so it's probably all of her abilities. That she's going to get 1.5 seconds off, so yeah, obviously off this ability as well. And then 2 allies, this is pretty important, you know, 1.5 second cooldown reduction is pretty big. Half a horn shard, basically, every time you cast this ability, you're going to work on her other abilities as well. Definitely a buff to this ability overall, even though the healing got decreased. And finally, Undying Love. Using this ability provides the self and the ally the jealousy effect for 5 seconds that you normally get when you kiss an enemy. And that's an up to 20% damage dealt buff, so this could be pretty big, man. You know, another thing for potentially APHRO support, you know, if you just link to the ADC and when you press your ult, and for Aphrodite mid, you can stack this with Staff of Myrddin, get some pretty huge burst damage after you cast your ult or something. Definitely pretty huge buff on the ult there. So yeah, Aphrodite definitely buffed in this patch. Definitely buffed. This is huge. This is huge. This is probably slightly better than it was before, but obviously it did take a pretty major nerf to the healing. But, you know, even with the support Aphrodite thing, you know, this no longer scales with magical power, so you're potentially going to be you know, seeing some more support Aphrodites, or at least bruiser, tanky Aphrodites maybe. You know, perhaps more from solo, because it's easier to get away with than going Aphrodite support. But yeah, definitely big buffs. Hell also getting some pretty big buffs. So the Light Stance passive no longer provides bonus healing, but now provides an 8% power reduction to enemies in the aura radius. So basically switching out the healing for a bit of a different utility there. Decay, her Dark Stance 1 now goes through walls, so you can potentially snipe people with that. Restoration, they've decreased the heal as usual. Overall, I've read through these, they're basically going to be about similar to the Aphrodite one, where like they're slightly weaker in healing overall. The ability now damages and passes through minions though. This is pretty big. This is going to be a nice increase to Hell's wave clear, especially when you consider that this ability now provides a mana heal. Not when you use it on minions, when you use it on an ally and it heals you, it provides a mana heal to you and to them as well. So that's going to be pretty enormous. You know, Aphrodite can give mana to her teammates. Always could, but gives mana to her teammates. Hell can do that now as well. And yeah, this is going to more than refund the cost of the ability if you're using it on allies. And Hell really does have mana problems more than any other god in the game. So giving her extra mana is going to be pretty important. Inspire, the Light Stance 3, the main heal, decrease the self-heal as usual, decrease the ally heal as usual. Basically going to be the same case for a lot of these. This also affects the ally minion heal as well, but this ability now provides 20% attack speed to self and allies for the duration. So the 20% attack speed basically irrelevant for Hell. You're probably not basic stacking on Hell all that much. You want to keep your mobility up and not have that however much it is, 50% I think, movement penalty for range basic attacks. You don't want that, so probably not relevant to Hell very much, but definitely going to be good for like buffing up her ADCs, or maybe auto attack junglers, or just attack speed in general is pretty useful to damage dealers. And decrease cooldown from 2 to 1 second on the switch stances, so you just have a bit more control over when you switch stances and stuff like that. So yeah, overall definitely Hell buffs. Going to be healing a bit less, but has much more utility overall, and also that this mana gain is going to be pretty huge as well. Yemoja getting a similar treatment. Of course, only Aphrodite and Hell are getting heal scaling per level. Every other healer isn't going to be getting that, so this just now heals a flat amount of 20 to 100 depending on ability rank, and that's it. So major nerf to the heal for Yemoja, much more so than Aphrodite and Hell, because this is going from... This is less, like 10 up to 30 less base, but also the magical power scaling removed. So yeah, definitely really huge nerf to the heal on Mending Waters, but it is going to be getting slightly increased shields as you rank it up, and increased damage as well, although the damage was never really that relevant. Sylvanas, similar thing, decrease the heal slightly, but minions are healed and damaged for 25% of the amount, so they're partially bringing back the Sylvanas, crazy release Sylvanas pressure, dude. This used to hit minions, for those that don't know, way back on his release in like 2014, I think it was for Sylvanas, 2015 or something like that. It was Season 1. This used to hit minions, and it gave Sylvanas the most insane pressure of any support. He still has really good pressure because of his AoE basics for the wave clear, but now he can also heal and damage his minions and enemy minions as well, which is going to massively increase his pressure. Yeah, they're still not hit by the initial bonus proc, should remain to the 50% value, but yeah, going to be hitting minions. Going to be pretty huge. But it won't proc seed pods for his passive on hitting minions. That would be pretty insane. Chang'e, decrease the heal. Going to be a flat amount. So the flat amount has gone up slightly, but the 30% scaling is going to be absolutely a major nerf to the healing of the ability overall. And they've also removed the healing reduction debuff on this ability, which is pretty interesting. I'm pretty sure Chang'e is the only healer that had built-in healing reduction. So yeah, pretty major nerf to Moonflower Dance here. But new debuff applied from all damaging abilities. Chang'e deals 5% increased damage to this enemy, stacking 3 times, and the debuff lasts 4 seconds. With some cooldown reduction, I'm pretty sure Chang'e 1 goes down to about 4 seconds, maybe even below, so you can probably keep this thing stacked up pretty reliably and just keep poking with your 1 and dealing 15% increased damage once this is fully stacked up. So a little bit of a damage increase, but obviously the healing decrease, and remove the healing reduction as well. Ra, lots of changes here, because this thing does a lot. Solar Blessing does a lot of different things now. They've decreased the heal, of course, but they've also increased the protection buff, the power buff of both kinds, decreased the cooldown, and decreased the mana cost. The mana cost on this was very high. 105 at rank 5 is like some of the highest mana costs for any ability, really. More interestingly, though, Searing Pain decreased the power scaling by 5% on it, but added a new component that deals true damage equal to 5% of the target's max HP to enemy gods. That's pretty insane. Against a Squishy that, let's say, has 2,000 health. I think Squishies at level 20 have a bit more than 2,000, but 2,000's easy math. That's going to be 100 extra damage, which is probably, well, definitely going to outmatch the 5% scaling decrease. So a big damage buff for Searing Pain, and obviously against tanks, that's going to be hitting even harder. Guan Yu decreased the healing from 50 up to 150 to 30 up to 110. Obviously, this gets doubled by his passive if he's got that up, so it will be healing more than 110. That does seem quite low. This ability now applies the 1 second flat CDR effect on all allied gods healed. So similar to Aphrodite, Guan can now give his teammates like a cooldown refresh, which is going to be really strong. This ability's up super often, and with one of the new items where when you heal people, you get like decreased cooldowns. That's going to be a pretty good synergy with Guan there. And they increase the max stacks on the debuff and buff from Tyler Assault, where it steals protections up to 4, which is going to be pretty huge. That ability already steals so many protections and hits so hard because of it, so increasing the stack count going to make Tyler Assault shred you even harder. Terra decreased from 3 up to 15 plus 5% to 2 up to 10, so a major nerf at Terra here. Big nerf on the base amount, and also the 5% magical power scaling is gone, but the ability now provides 10 up to 30 protections while inside the area, which is pretty relevant for your backliners. You know, that's going to be reducing the damage they take by probably like 5% or so. That's just random, like, off the top of my head math from the protection formula. Probably about 5% damage reduction at max rank for this in late game. Earthen Fury decreased the heal from 100 up to 300 plus 30% to 70 up to 210. Wow. Big Terra healing nerfs, dude. Jesus, I feel like she's gotten the raw end of the stick for most of these. Remove the heal over time from the ability as well. Damn. They increased the mitigation from 5 to 10, but that's nowhere near enough to compensate for the massive reduction they've done to this. Damn. Okay, so Terra healing gutted in this patch. Horus, they increased the protections but reduced the healing on the passive effect, and also decreased the heal on his dash from 70 up to 250 to 40 up to 160, and of course removed the power scaling. But they've decreased the cooldown from 16 to 10 seconds. See, that is the kind of compensation you need, not what Terra got. That is, he got less of a healing nerf, but more of a compensation for this. Also decreased mana cost, but yeah, 10 seconds, if you have 40% CDR, which you don't always have in support, but if you did, that goes down to 6 seconds. 6-second mobility plus heal. That's going to be really, really nice for Horus, man. Olaron just decreased it slightly. Olaron obviously not a primary healer by any means. Cupid decreased the heal per heart as well. Not a primary healer by any means, but pretty big reduction there. Cupid now gains a passive stack whenever he or an ally picks up a heart from this ability. Great change. A little bit more synergy with this kit. Probably should have been this way the whole time. And decreased the cooldown of the ability slightly. Baron decreased the flat heal by not too much, but removed the 10% scaling, and decreased the missing health heal from 7.5 to 5%, but the ability now applies slow immunity for the entire buff duration instead of just a slow cleanse. I think at launch this was how it worked, actually, so they basically reverted that to basically how it was at launch, but the healing, pretty major nerf as well. Definitely not compensated for. Overall, a nerf for Baron for sure. Decrease the cooldown of Dispel Magic from 16 to 14. Super powerful ability, so decreasing the cooldown on that is pretty huge. Will obviously help her support and her mid as well. Increase the damage mitigation in her ult from 25 to 30, but they decreased the healing pretty majorly. Because obviously she was typically built mage unless you're playing her in support, so that 25% scaling was pretty relevant. But if you are going to be playing her in support, the base healing has actually gone up. In the later ranks, the 25% scaling and support would usually not even make up for that, to be honest, depending on how much power you had. APHRO getting a lot of changes, so decrease the heal on her 1, increase the druid power debuff to compensate, increase the bear self buff of protections to compensate as well, because they're also decreasing the healing on life tap, increase bear slow, and increase movement speed per stack, so you get it a little bit faster, but at rank 1 and rank 5 it's basically the same. So yeah, just a bunch of minor changes for APHRO, decreasing 2 of her heals, but buffing some of her other abilities to compensate for that. Cthulhu attack speed slow on the 1 goes up at the lower ranks, but the same at level 20. Increase base damage per shot on the Maya, that's pretty decent, you know, because it hits twice. And decrease the self-damage of Transfuse from 6% to 4%, but decrease the ally healing from 8 up to 12 to 5 up to 9. Pretty decent for Cthulhu here, because really, Cthulhu, the healing wasn't too relevant. In the ult, you use this, but you don't, like, rely on it by any means. It's not like he's, like, a major team healer or anything like that. Also, I think a few of these gods, like Cthulhu and maybe APHRO as well, I think all 3 of these, Iset, APHRO, and Cthulhu, are now tier 3 healers in Assault, so that'll be pretty relevant for that. But yeah, overall buffs for Cthulhu, I think, because the heal wasn't, like, super relevant, and getting some damage increases and attack speed slow increases is nice for his 1 and 2. And now we move into the non-team healer god balance, which most of these changes I'm going to skim over. I might not even talk about them if they're just, let's have a look at Achilles. Yeah, this I'm probably not going to bother talking about. It's just a slight protection and power increase on the passive and a slight reduction on the healing from his 2. This kind of stuff I'm not going to talk about. You can read the full patch notes. There's so many of these changes that are just this, and they're not really worth talking about because they won't really change the god's viability all that much. They seem to be overall nerfs, but probably not worth talking about. If there's any major changes, though, I will go on to them, because I know there are a few big changes in here. Oh, this one's funny, though. Remove the passive healing, and it now counts as HP 5. I guess they caught on to Final K's Lotus Sickle tech, right? Yeah, so Anubis here, definitely one we need to talk about. So they've decreased the healing increase per stack from 33% to 20% on the passive, so that's pretty relevant. You know, no longer double healing when you have this fully stacked, which is very easy to stack because he's all take damage. It's going to be 60% increased instead. Also, the nerfing of the lifesteal items, pretty major for Anubis' healing, because that's the way he keeps himself alive, basically. But Plague of Locusts, Anubis can now move at 50% speed while using this ability, and it now deals damage basically at twice the tick rate, so you're going to stack your passive up faster, you're going to stack up any kind of on-hit effects faster. And they've decreased the damage per tick, basically, to compensate for that. It is ever so slightly higher. That's 100 versus 95, and the scaling's the same. So basically, the main thing here is that he can move at 50% speed while firing this ability. Rejoice, Anubis mains. You finally don't have to self-root for one of your abilities. Maybe the ult comes next. Who knows? Arachne, probably worth talking about. So the debuff from this ability now applies 40% healing reduction on her 1. That's pretty cool. Very thematic, I think. That definitely would be something that would reduce healing, I think, a Venomous Bite. And also decrease the healing of it in line with everything else. And her 2 targets successfully stunned by Cocoon also have their active cooldowns increased by 2 seconds flat. So this is like anti-CDR. And decreased cooldown from 15 seconds to 14 seconds. So this is pretty interesting. They've obviously introduced, I can't remember the name of the item, but the one on the Druid Stone tree where it increases people's cooldowns. They're experimenting a bit more with that by adding it into some god kits. And this isn't percent, it's 2 seconds flat. So yeah, pretty interesting. You know, maybe their movement ability Like, if you can blink in, force their movement ability, and then you cocoon them, their movement ability won't be up quite as quickly, and you can maybe chase them down a bit more. Definitely gonna help Arachne there. Overall, probably a buff, I would say. The healing isn't something Arachne relied on too much, and having anti-heal will be nice for taking down healers, and this is a very nice buff as well. Bakasura gets a similar treatment. Takedown now applies a 40% healing reduction, so if you're jumping in on people, they're not going to be able to heal quite as much. And decrease the healing on Eat Minion pretty dramatically, because 70% power scaling on it was pretty huge, but cooldown decrease from 15 to 8 in a similar vein to the Horus change from earlier. Massive cooldown decrease. This is going to be enormous, dude. I mean, I don't want to see Baka bust, I don't know about you guys, but definitely going to be pretty huge for the guy. You know, overall, this is probably going to be a similar amount of healing. Like, this won't actually be decreased that much, considering it's up almost twice as often. And he's going to be able to stack his ultimate much more frequently as well, which is going to be nice for him. Camazotz, the individual changes themselves aren't really worth talking about, but basically he's gotten changes to many of his abilities, because obviously Camazotz, 3 of his abilities if you include the passive heal him, so like changes to the passive, the 3 and the 2 in terms of the healing they provide, and also provides an anti-heal effect as well on the 2. So a bunch of assassins getting anti-heal effects for sure, and then also some buffs to Screech to kind of compensate for all this healing reduction that he's been getting. Cerberus gets anti-heal buffs, as well as buffs to his 1, to compensate for the fact that Soul Expulsion now heals quite a bit less. Sononos gets a nerf to the Spring Growth Physical Lifesteal, but a buff to basically every other aspect of his 1, so that should be pretty nice for him. The days of infinite scaling, full power Chak are probably dead, because he no longer has scaling on the heal, it's just going to be a flat amount, of course. They've increased the attack speed reduction, mainly at the early ranks to compensate, so probably don't box Chak in the early game now. If he has his axe down, that's going to be a 30% attack speed slow, even at level 3 when you initially get this ability, so that's going to be pretty huge for him, and also increase the damage of Stormcall, the base damage. Erlang's 1, decreased healing, but increased the damage reduction, and decreased healing on the ult as well, but increased the mitigation from 10 up to 20%, just 25% flat, so that's going to be really huge for the early game. You know, your level 5 ults and stuff like that are going to be taking a lot less damage, and increased taunt duration to 1.5 seconds, so now it's a relatively long taunt. Just a quick one for me. Finally, the physical lifesteal on Fenrir's 2 has been decreased. It had way too much, dude, to be honest. Definitely justified for that to go down from 35%. Hercules, obviously a god that is pretty reliant on his heal, because they're reducing the initial heal and also the damage returned as healing pretty substantially. But he is getting major buffs in the rest of his kit. So Earthbreaker going down from 13 down to 11 to just 11. Pretty relevant considering it's the ability you rank last. So going to be 11 seconds at all times, and also decreased mana cost, and a very similar situation with Driving Strike, but this one never scaled down in cooldown, so it's just going to go from 13 straight down to 11. You know, obviously it makes sense, because now you can reliably have the combo up, like, at the same time, because you use 2 into 1. Kali's ultimate decreased heal on kill down to 40%, dude. Remember the days when this was 80 or 90%? Man, this has taken some pretty severe nerfs, dude. Kali, not quite the hyper carry she used to be, for sure. Decreased the lifesteal on a 2 as well. Decreased the missing health healing, and slight damage increase. Major Kali nerfs, to be honest. She barely got anything to compensate. She got, like, what, 15 damage per rank on her 1 that you don't often use that much for damage anyway? Oh wait, I didn't see more changes, sorry. Kali getting a lot of changes, dude. Increased stun duration on Incense and decreased the cooldown of it, and increased the damage per tick on her roll. So yeah, she is getting a bit more to compensate, actually. Neith increased base HP from 609 to 640. Was this intentional, dude? Was this intentional? I feel like 609 is such a weird number that it can't have not been intentional. Dude, someone at Smite is an absolute meme god. Rat's Acorns decrease the health restore on both Evergreen and Thickbark, as well as decreasing the lifesteal on Bristlebush, but they all get increased power to compensate. Also, Acorn Blast increased damage per Acorn pretty substantially, but they've increased the damage reduction on multiple Acorns from 25% to 40%, and decreased the reduction floor as well. So basically shifting around how this ability works in terms of hitting multiple Acorns, and also decreasing the cooldown down to 12 seconds. Less relevant if you're building the Acorns that require Acorn Blast to be ranked first, but if you're building the tanky Acorns where you rank Flurry first, then definitely a very relevant change. Thana getting some pretty major changes, so decrease the health cost from all of his abilities from 5% to 4%, and obviously the ult costs twice the amount, so 10% to 8% on the ult. But also the passive, instead of 20% of the target's max HP to 15, and 10 to 7 for minions. Decrease the cooldown of Death Scythe, but of course decrease the healing from 75% to 50%. Decrease cooldown of Soul Reap. Increase the base damage of his ult, I guess. I mean, if you're initiating for the stun, which sometimes you do, but you obviously mostly use this for the execute. Increase the stun duration from 1 second to 1.5 is pretty huge though, so maybe you can use this a bit more as an initiation to kind of get in on the fight. Tia gets gutted. Well, I guess gutted and also majorly buffed in a certain way. So switch stance goes from 12 down to 10 to just 10 flat, and obviously you rank this ability last, so that is pretty relevant for the laning phase. Going to be able to change stance and get abilities out more often. But they've absolutely destroyed the healing on guard stance power cleave. 20 up to 120, now 15 up to 95, plus they've removed the 20% physical power scaling. So guard stance power cleave, it's fallen from grace, boys. It's fallen from grace. This used to be so much stronger than 95. Ula getting decreased lifesteal from the 2 buff, but decreased cooldown on his 2 as self and also on Hail of Arrows. Definitely buffs for Ula here. He liked the lifesteal, but it wasn't a major component of his gameplay by any means, whereas the cooldowns on these abilities is a major component of his gameplay. So major buffs for the mana dude: increased base attack speed from 0.9 to 1, increased physical protection conversion on his passive from 20% to 25%, and the attack speed conversion from 10% to 15. Increased protections by 10 at all ranks, and increased power in the early game, but the same in late game. All of this just for a 5% lifesteal reduction on the ultimate. Very huge mana buffs. Prepare to see more of this guy. But that's pretty much all the relevant changes. I skipped over a good portion of them, probably about half the changes I didn't bother covering because they were really just minor changes, as I said. They're just like decreased healing here, better in some other aspect of the kit, basically. You can check out the full patch notes if you want to have like a full read of all the changes, I guess. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this one. It'll probably be my last video, I think, on Season of Hope. Mid 3 so far on all the different changes and stuff. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed these videos. Definitely subscribe to the channel, as I'll probably be making the new start guide for when the patch launches and stuff like that, and probably a patch overview as well. And yeah, I will catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.